Tuesday, May 26, 2015. If we can all stand for the invocation. Chief Gonzalez, can you lead us in an invocation?
Let's bow our heads, please. Lord, we come before you on tonight's meeting. Please give us the wisdom and the courage for our Mayor and Commission to make the right decisions for the city of San Juan. Bless everybody in attendance, and also keep an eye and bless those that are right now are suffering from the losses all across the state of Texas and the flooding. So please help us lead us in the right way and give us the right direction. In your name we pray.
Amen. Let us face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Go Bears. I know.
Under public comments, we have Ramiro Tre- ...2005 PSJA Bears softball team. It's our ladies team, and it's not just our ladies team. There's something really special about them. They went to the 32 5A by A district champions. That's who's sitting here with us, and they went to the area finalists. And so I'm going to call forward their coach, Teresa Thibodeau, to come forward and introduce the girls to us. We're very proud of the accomplishments of how far they went and how dedicated they are. And believe me, some of these are seniors, so we've got a great season coming up. And so if y'all can please come forward, we'd love to hear a little bit more about what the season was like. Girls, why don't you come forward?
Yes, good evening. Thank you for having us this evening. And I'd like to introduce, starting with senior Marisol Acero, junior Gabby Fonseca, junior Jennifer Lopez, catcher, junior our pitcher Valeria Gonzalez,
Congratulations.
our third baseman Anissa Abitawa, first baseman Alisa Abitawa, and Jackie outfield. And this is most of our team, but the rest of the girls couldn't be here because of other reasons, last week of school and the other commitments they've had. So yes, it has been a great and tremendous year. We went to the area round in softball this year, and this is a team that we've been together for 3 years now, and we always said that this would be the year that they would do really well, and they have, and they've come together as a team and have really come and promoted our school and our school district and our community. And it has also taken, of course my staff is not here tonight, but it's taken all of them. It's taken all of my parents, and it's taken the community, and we so appreciate you being there for all the games. It was so nice to look up in the stands and see a sea of maroon up there. Really appreciate the support very much. We wound up 20-10 in overall record. We came out in second place in district. We played some great teams. Defeated Mercedes, which was a really big game for us, and we've had a really terrific time this year. Again, thank you for having us this evening, and we really appreciate it and hope to see you there again next year.
Absolutely. And on behalf of the behalf of the City of San Juan Commission, and of course, all our residents of City of San Juan, we're very proud of you, young ladies. And I know that some of you are getting ready to be seniors. We expect great things from you to come back and bring back to our community. But wonderful that you went this far, and we're very proud. I want to thank the parents who are present and those that are not for having dedicated themselves to making sure these young ladies are where they are. And I know that they're definitely going to go far. So thank you so much. And we'd like to take a picture with them. And if you can come forward, Coach. Why don't you move closer to the middle so we can get our folks on either side. Look at that one first, okay? That one's on. Now look at your hair.
They included all you game too. That one.
We have another great item on our agenda. These are the fun ones. B is a proclamation recognizing longtime San Juan resident Rick Diaz for his long and distinguished career in journalism in the Rio Grande Valley. I'll go ahead and ask either the Mayor Pro Tem or Commissioner Ramirez to please address this.
First of all, thank you for being here, and it's a pleasure and an honor. Also my privilege. I've known Mr. Diaz for a very long time, and is really an example of greatness in the city of San Juan. And I know we recognized you last week at the county, and I thought, your city should also recognize you for all of your accomplishments. And I'll read the proclamation. It says, whereas Rick Diaz is a pioneer for setting the course for Hispanic and Latino journalists in the Rio Grande Valley, and whereas during his 48-year career as a journalist, Mr. Diaz had offers to leave the valley to work in large news markets such as Los Angeles, California, and Washington, D.C., but chose to stay due to his love of family and the valley. And whereas he has been a mentor to many young journalists, a supporter of his community, a nationally recognized newsman, and whereas Mr. Diaz was born and raised in McAllen to a family of migrant farm workers. In a speech at a commencement at his alma mater, UTPA, Mr. Diaz advised graduates to remember your parents and grandparents because they helped pave part of the road for you. And whereas he is most well known for his work at KRGV-TV Channel 5, where he has been a reporter, producer, news director, and anchor. Mr. Diaz created the long-running news segment Con Mi Gente in 1998, featuring the best in small-town heroes, businesses, and valley icons. And whereas after a distinguished nearly 50-year career in broadcast news, Mr. Diaz will vacate his anchor chair and retire on May 22nd, 2015. His signature sign-off of "Good night, y que pasen muy buenas noches" will be missed. And whereas, although retiring, Mr. Diaz will continue his work on Con Mi Gente, but intends to travel, see some Major League Baseball games, and spend time with his wife, Rosie, a principal at Clover Elementary School in the PSJ Independent School District, daughters Lisa and Laura, and granddaughters Brittany, Brianna, and Laura Rose. And whereas Mr. Diaz has been a longtime resident of the city of San Juan and an active member of our community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that with the mayor, San Juanita Sanchez, and the power vested in her as mayor of the city of San Juan, along with myself, Mayor Pro Tem Armando Garza, Commissioner Mario Garza, Commissioner Jesus Jesse Ramirez, and Commissioner Sheikh Cantu, hereby issue this proclamation to Rick Diaz on May 26, 2015. Thank you, sir. You can all come around so we can get a picture.
Want to take a picture with you? So who does the story con mi gente about you?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Commissioners. It's really been my pleasure. I was born in McAllen, but I married a San Juan girl.
There you go.
So guess what? Guess where I live?
That's right, that's
But
right.
this has been great, and it's sort of difficult following this group right here. I mean, how do you do that? Yeah, it's congratulations to you girls.
He also went to state.
Yeah, a few years ago. But I want to thank you. This is really very nice of you all, and I appreciate it, and it really touches me that you all have gone through this for me. It's tough. I'm very blessed that I have the family that I have, and the job that I had. I really love doing what I do, and especially I was telling the mayor that when I first told them I was going to retire, and they asked me if I would continue doing Con Mi Gente, and it took me like 2 seconds to say, okay. So I will continue that, but again, I thank you, and I thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now we move into the really fun stuff. Presentation of the annual financial report for the City of San Juan, Texas for fiscal year ending September 30th, 2014. Mr. Garza?
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the
Good
commission.
evening.
I don't know if y'all want to make an exit. This gets kind of boring from here on out, so I won't feel offended.
The mayor was joking when she said it was the fun part.
But
I
I won't
like
feel offended
it.
if anybody needs to leave. Please take your.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Good evening again, Madam Mayor, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Noel Garza, and I'm one of the principals of Reina and Garza CPAs. We were hired to conduct the annual financial audit for the city of San Juan for the year end September 30, 2014. I believe you received your packets, which contain the audit report. And if I just will briefly cover some items, some of the key points of the report. There's a lot of information here. and I won't go into a lot of detail, but it's very thorough and very complete. But I cover the key elements that most commissions are interested in, and but of course I will entertain any questions or comments that you may have. If you would mind, please turn to page 2 of your report. Page 2 is our audit opinion, our independent auditor's report. Now, for the sake of the new commissioners, the auditor's report is our opinion on the financial statements, which have been, for which we have conducted analysis, audit, investigation, and review and analysis of financial information of the city's financial statements that were provided to us. And so we conduct these audit procedures to be able to develop an opinion on the financial statements and render that opinion on the state of the financial condition of the city as of September 30th. If you would, at the very last paragraph on page 2, I will paraphrase what it states here, that it reads, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the governmental activities, business type activities, and a few additional funds there for the city of San Juan as of September 30, 2014. This opinion is called an unmodified report, an unmodified opinion. An unmodified, the terminology has changed, but unmodified is the highest rendering that you can attain. It signifies that we felt very comfortable with the financial statements as they were presented after our audits were completed, and we did not feel that there were any material adjustments that had to be made that weren't already made prior to the financial statements being completed to give an accurate picture of the financial condition of the city as of that date. So an unmodified is the highest rendering that you can achieve, and that's a very positive note to begin with. If you would mind, please, very briefly, page 13 is your balance sheet for the city. Now, the first column on this balance sheet is your general fund. And of course, the general fund is the fund that the city primarily operates under. And this is a balance sheet which includes your assets, liabilities, and fund balances. Just to point out a few numbers here, your total assets ended the year at $3.7 million. Your liabilities, $700,000. And your fund balance ended the year at $1,854,000 in the general fund. There are debt service fund and other funds listed on that same page, and then of course there's a total for all the governmental funds. The governmental funds are all the funds except for your utility funds. Those are enterprise funds. These are all the other funds, special revenue funds, debt service, capital projects, and your general fund. So just to highlight again, the year ended at $1.8 million in general fund balance. Very briefly on page 15, we have your statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. For lack of a better term, this is your income statement for the governmental funds. Again, the first column is your general fund, and you'll note there that you ended the year at $9.2 million in revenue, just slightly up from the year before. It was at 9.15 million, so there's a slight increase over the previous year. Of course, you'll note there the largest of your revenues are your property tax collections and your sales tax revenues. Your expenditures follow with their categories being general government, public safety, public works, culture and recreation. And the total expenditures for the general fund ended the year at $10.2 million.
May I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
On the general sales and taxes, this is before we deduct the half cents?
Sorry.
Does that include the half cent of the EDC?
It does not. That number gets transferred over to the EDC fund.
Okay.
So this is the portion excluding the EDC. So you'll note there in the expenditures, your government had expenditures of $2.6 million, public safety 5.1 million, public works at 1.1, and culture and recreation at $1.3 million, for a total of 10.2. There was a transfer in, further down, you'll note the transfer in of $400,000 that came from the utility funds. And as a result of the expenditures exceeding your revenues, including this transfer in, there was a reduction of $614,000 for the year. So what that translates to is your fund balance was decreased by $614,000, because your expenditures exceeded your revenues for this particular year. And the debt service and other funds are also noted there, but the general fund is the one that we choose to expand on.
Mr. Garza, if I could
Absolutely.
interrupt you briefly. Along with this packet, we received this report.
Yes, sir.
And looking at the last paragraph, and just because you just mentioned it, so I want to address that, or would like for you to address it. It mentions that you noted that during the reconciliation of the utility billings, there was some issues there that you noted. But the one that I'm wanting to specifically speak to here is you mentioned that there was a change or a drop in utility revenue.
Yes.
In comparison to previous years. Would you happen to know, or is it noted in this report? Because it's a little complicated at times for a layperson like myself. Is it somewhere in here that would tell us exactly what that difference is, or that drop? As you
The
mentioned?
dollar amount, we were actually, Ms. Gonzalez and myself and Mr. Leroy Gonzalez were sitting before the meeting and going over some of the financial numbers, and the actual drop in revenue from the previous year was $150,000 in utility revenue. I note it because it's unusual for a utility fund to have a decrease. Typically, you expect it to stay constant at a minimum. Just, even with perhaps you're losing some customers, but then you typically would gain customers, and you would expect to try to to at a minimum maintain your current revenue levels. So for revenues to decrease, it was, I considered to be unusual, and, in looking at it, we did notice some significant adjustments that were occurring in the billing system, and so I brought it out as not as a finding, but as a recommendation for it to be looked at further to ensure that the system is operating as intended.
And there were overall adjustments or adjustments to particular accounts?
I could not answer that, Mayor. We could not find, we weren't provided any detail that would explain to what accounts the adjustments were being made. All we could see, it was in a summarized form in total for the months as we looked at the different months. I know that the staff tried to go back and analyze it and determine where, but there was not a whole lot of documentation. For what reason, I don't know, but there was not a whole lot of detailed documentation that could be readily found that would explain which accounts were affected. But I'm sure that they'll continue to investigate it and try to identify a little more specifically. Our concern was just that the fact that it dropped, and which was it's the first time it's ever dropped, in the years that we've worked with you all.
And we would be able to find out what time of the year that happened?
Absolutely. In looking at the reports, there are monthly reports, and so we did look at them from month to month, and we could note in which months the adjustments occurred. So I think from those, then you can pinpoint a month and then look at the detailed reports that support those adjustments to try to identify what type of accounts. Was there an error in the billing? Were there just, we weren't given enough information to be able to ascertain what or why it occurred. And then there was a turnover in staff, so that kind of makes it a little more complicated. The personnel that were there at the time are no longer there, so everybody's kind of trying to look, but without knowing the background behind it that would have caused it. Okay.
Additionally, as you mentioned, there was a transfer in of $414,000. What was that transfer in?
That came from the utility fund into the general fund. We didn't look at to see what caused the transfer. All we looked for is, did it come in and was it approved? And so we did identify that. From talking with the staff, it seemed that it was an item that came to the commission to transfer proceeds from a lawsuit settlement.
And that's kind of where I was headed in that direction. So I'm glad you got to that. So yes, we had agreed to transfer those funds in to work on several projects, if you all remember, particularly the canal lowering projects that we did on Eldora, Sioux, and Sergeant Trevino. My question then, and particularly because when we look at the net change in fund balance of $614,000, that also, I think, is probably, well, it's accurate as you've audited. I don't mean to suggest otherwise.
Okay.
But what I mean to suggest is that I think that there's still additional transfer ins that need to be done, because the original, and correct me if I'm wrong, the original plan was we would pay from the fund balance, the funds necessary to get those projects completed, and then we would transfer in from the utility fund so as to not have such a large net change in our fund balance. And I guess my question is are there more transfer-ins that are required or needed? Because the plan was always to transfer the entire amount of the proceeds from the lawsuit into the fund balance, because we were going to be expending that in several different projects. And so if we have not done that, I believe that's something that we need to do so that we can lower this net change in the fund balance, because that was the overall plan that this commission had agreed to and voted on to do. And so if that's something that can get looked at and reported back at a future meeting, because I think at the end of the day, particularly as this commission is going to move forward in issuing certificates of obligation, these types of things really impact that as well. And so we need to make sure that we've accounted and we've executed plans that we've agreed to and voted on here. And I believe, Counselor, maybe you can help me. Do you recall the balance of that settlement in the lawsuit? Okay. It was in excess of 414. That I do remember. And so there still is some of those funds that I believe still need to get transferred into the general fund. So if we can take a look at that and report back, if you would, please.
In the line of statement that the Mayor Pro Tem is making, if it was the monies from the settlement, wouldn't the monies be coming in from a established fund rather than from the fund balance?
Well, it's coming,
Because-
go ahead, I'm sorry.
Because I don't think that we had put it into the fund balance. It was separated as a separate fund from the settlement money. So it came in as, I guess, I don't know, do we consider it revenue at that point?
But on the utility side.
On the utility side, as a matter of fact, as we were going over the report, we went back and looked at the detail from 2013 to look at the specific transaction, and we did identify a receipt of revenues from a law firm, which we didn't have time to look at the actual backup, but it seemed to indicate that there were proceeds from some legal nature that went into the utility fund, and it was just a little bit over $500,000. And so because it was not transferred at that point in time, it rolls into the fund balance of the utility fund. And
Utility fund.
Yes, ma'am. And so during this year, then you performed a transfer from the utility fund over to the general fund. So in essence, it's removing it from the fund balance because you're adding an additional expense to some revenues that were already calculated. And so therefore, you're reducing your fund balance and moving it over to the general fund as a transfer. So in essence, it does reduce your fund balance in the enterprise fund because it had been recognized in revenue in the previous year. And that does roll into fund balance. I hope that answers your question.
It does, but there I saw another 200 and plus thousand that was a deficit as well. But you'll get into those numbers as we move on.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
One item that I did want to comment, as we're talking about deficits here in the general fund and your fund balance, I know we've discussed this in the past, and I'm sure you all have seen it in other occasions. It's typically governmental entities, it's recommended to keep 2 to 3 months worth of fund balance in the general fund for contingencies and emergencies. And just looking at your expenditures for the year in the general fund, the 10.2 million translates to roughly 800,000 a month. And so if you look at if you take the 800,000 and you compare it to the 1.8 million, you have a little bit over 2 months worth of fund balance. And so I only bring that up just as a reminder that, of course, the fund balance is at your discretion to be utilized as you see fit. We just remind commissions that that there would be some, it would be our recommendation to keep some fund balance there available for contingencies, emergencies, as we've had in the past, hurricanes that have come through, and you've had to use fund balance to make repairs while FEMA comes back and tries to reimburse you at a later date. But in the meantime, you've got to have revenues to be able to, or funds to be able to accomplish these things. And so as you take your steps to consider future projects and debate your budgets and such, keep that in the back of your mind that you want to try to be conservative, if, and it's, I'm not in your position to be able to make those decisions. I just comment that, just keep in mind that you want to try to keep something there for emergency's sake.
Absolutely, and well noted.
Okay, thank you. Now, page 17 is your budget to actual for the general fund. And the first two columns are your budget. The first column is your original budget, the second is your final, the third is your actual realized, which are the numbers that were taken from the previous page, your income statement, and then the last column is your variance, either positive or negative. The first two, at the third of the way down, you'll note the revenues for the year were budgeted at 9.5 million, and they remained unchanged during the year. And your actual revenues realized were $9.2 million. So the revenues did not materialize. $275,000 of expected revenue did not materialize during the year. So you did not raise the revenue that you thought you would to that extent. And it was in various accounts that it didn't occur, but it's one of those things that the revenues didn't materialize. So then that kind of compounds the deficit issue, because your expenditures were there, but the revenues didn't come in that you thought would.
Would you state, or would it be true to state that charges for services links back to that utility fund? No, that goes to utilities.
Actually, Mayor, we looked at that specifically. The charges for services that decreased there, we identified it down specifically to one account,
Okay.
being the building permits.
Okay,
Building permits, for some reason, was budgeted at 405,000, but only 95,000 materialized.
it was budgeted at what?
I believe it was 405,000. Am I right?
200-something thousand,
Let me see.
yeah.
It would ended up being, I'm trying to recall now. It was significantly short, Mayor. It was, I want to say $150,000 to $200,000 below.
It was at 306,000?
Oh, 306,000
Yeah,
budget,
and
and 95 materialized.
95,000, yeah.
So basically, $200,000 that was expected, that was budgeted to be received in building permits did not come in.
Was that a trending, what was it the year before?
No, the year before, it was actual 283,000 for 11.
So something caused a decrease in permits. And I brought that up as we were meeting, because we looked at your 2015 budget, and the permits, again, was budgeted a very large number. And so I suggested and I recommended that the staff go back and analyze the current year revenues to see where that budget, the realized revenues for those permits are at in comparison to the budget. And that way, if they have to come back to you for some kind of budget adjustment, they have an opportunity to do so. Because that did compound your shortfall. So as you look down, continue looking down that page, of course, your expenditures are the next categories. Your original budget was 9.5 million, and it ended basically at 9.5 million. But this is where the expenditures vary. Your budget was a 9.5, but your expenditures were at 10.2. So there was an exceeding expenditure that has exceeded your budgets in total, and several of the categories individually. So this is where, between the shortfall on the revenue and the excess expenditures in the fund and the different categories, both contributed to the deficit or the decrease in the fund balance for the current year.
368 under public safety and the public works were the two ones.
Yes, ma'am.
And then the public works was, are we able to identify, or were we able to identify what those were?
I think, yes, ma'am. I think we spoke before, again, looking at those specifically, and I think Mr. Gonzalez identified it being a specific project, the repair of the streets.
And then the 368 was the longevity for the fire department.
Expense, or is that going to be an incurring expense?
And so those items contributed to the decrease in fund balance. And just if we're done with that page, on page 20, this is your income statement for the utility funds. And I'll just point out the total revenues in the utility fund, which is the first column, was 5.1 million, and expenditures were at 4.3 million. And then there was a transfer out of the proceeds from the bond issue to the capital projects fund for the water line transfer. And then the solid waste had $2.8 million in revenues and $2.2 million in expenses. There are, beyond those pages, there are many schedules, notes that are required to support the financial statements. I won't go into detail on those. Just if you flip through pages 41 through 48, you can see some of the other smaller funds that the city utilizes in its operations, and those all combined make up the other column that was on the balance sheet and the income statement. But here they're broken down in detail, and you can look at those as you like and see the details that they entail, they include. On page 49 is the second report that is required for us to issue, and this one is our report on internal controls. And in this report, originally we had identified two items that we had brought to your attention on the last two paragraphs of this page, item number 2004-01 and 2004-02. Now, just this morning, we were provided some information related to the second one that allowed us to clear that item. So we have issued a revised report, this particular schedule, and Mr. Gonzalez has it, and we'll collect back your reports and replace that page. It had to do with a bidding of a project, and when we were conducting our testing, the documentation related to that bid could not be ascertained in its entirety, and so we were missing pieces, so it gave us the impression that the whole process wasn't completed as required by law. So we had to bring it up as an item. But it has, since this morning, they were able to locate it, and so we were satisfied with the results. The first item there, we'll note it on page 49. Page 51, and that's the particular item that we're referring to. This is a repeat item from the previous year, and we felt it was necessary to bring it up again, not necessarily as a reflection of the current staff, but more so a result of their not having the guidance of a finance director. It's really it's made it difficult for them to be able to complete their jobs timely and accurately, and so they're not having that guidance has really helped, really hindered them in their operations. And the staff you have does a wonderful job. They work very hard, but just not having that supervisor to be able to provide the guidance and provide that expertise, has hurt them. And it's been the second year in a row because of the change in staffing and personnel. But it was significant enough where we had to bring it up because of the amount of adjustments that were required to get the financial statements in order. Lastly, on page 54, I just briefly wanted to highlight some of the federal grants that the cities has been able to capitalize on and help in operations throughout the city. And you'll note the grand total there was $321,000. So from a variety of sources, the city has been able to utilize these federal funds to help fund specific projects and programs that otherwise would probably have to come out of your general fund. So that's always a highlight that we bring out because it helps the city in fulfilling its obligation, but yet it doesn't tax their taxpayers. So in summary, the financial controls we felt are good and strong. Your financial condition did decrease slightly, and I just recommend a caution in your budgeting and making sure you feel comfortable with your decisions. And overall, the financial condition is stable, and revenues did decrease, but that's something that needs to be looked at. And otherwise, I was very comfortable with your staff and their and their participation and their assistance in the audit. And we always, I'd like to thank them because they do a great job and, help us in completing this project. And I appreciate the opportunity to serve you all.
I want to ask you some questions on a letter that you also provided. You mentioned you make reference to receipts for that year of 2013, 2014.
Yes, ma'am.
And it talked about the cash that comes into Parks and Recreation. Does that include the board and the money they raise?
It just meant, well, I don't know if it includes those. The specific I was referring to is the receipts, that registration and gate receipts that they take in during their different programs that they run throughout the year, is what we were focused on.
Are you aware of a fund by the board?
Actually, this is the first I've heard of it. No,
Okay.
I'm not aware.
How about the receipts that are received over at the sanitation department?
Those
Folks
all,
that come in and drop off there, did you take a look at that? Those that come in, bring in brush and, or different,
no,
items for disposal?
Mayor, actually, we did not look at them specifically. The receipts typically all funnel through the utility department in collections at the city hall. Specifically, we did not test those for any particular controls.
We wanted those tested. I guess that would be something separate, because you randomly decide what you're going to do. That's how
Absolutely.
you
Based on
fairly.
the information we have and the feedback we get from interviews, we kind of, we identify areas that we think we need to look a little further. And it varies from year to year, all depending on the controls and who's in place and what we've done in the previous years. And if we haven't done it, then we say, it's time to look at this area. And especially if we hear, we do provide staff with questionnaires, and if anybody hints to something that, that they have concerns over, then we look at those and take those into consideration to identify areas that we want to take a look at closer and do it that way. Some of it's just random.
In your experience in doing audits with different cities, and because we have different departments that do take cash at different times, is there a recommendation, I don't know, by means of policy, where there's a centralized place to pay overall, so that by the time they get to a department, we've all received it in one rather than receiving at a different department?
I certainly.
What is it? What do you think would be the wise thing to do? What do you recommend?
In my personal opinion, Mayor, I think the fewer hands that handle cash, the better. It's just as a policy. So, if there's a way to consolidate cash receipts, it provides better controls throughout the city for all staff involved. So if the controls can be put in place where one, let's just, and I don't know specifically, but let's just say that the utility department clerks there at the City Hall, if they were identified to be the receivers of all cash receipts, and they could enter it into their system and then communicate the information to the respective departments to make them aware that the payments were received, whether it's through receipt, whether, I don't know if they have access to the same system where they'd be able to see that the payments were made. But in our opinion, it's always recommended the fewer hands that deal in cash, the better.
And when we're working in, for example, in concession stands that, have games and concession stands are had, what's the recommendation? With something like that, you couldn't go and take it to City Hall because it's in the evenings.
Matter of fact, Mayor, when I was interviewing Mr. Ponce, he and I had a great conversation, and that was one of the items specifically that we discussed, was trying to strengthen controls at gates and concessions. So one of the recommendations I had to him for the gates specifically was to have two persons, one person receiving the cash and issuing the tickets, controlled tickets, and then the other person taking the tickets at the gate. So that way the person receiving the tickets, it knows that these people have already paid and are authorized to enter. And then you've separated the controls. And then, of course, you can also have security there by the person receiving the funds to be able to minimize their risk. And then at the end of the evening, my suggestion was using lock bags that the bank can provide to you, and either having a police escort to the night depository at the bank and drop it in the night depository. We've seen this scenario in other entities where the district or the city will make the arrangements with the bank to go by the next morning, pick up those bags, and then take them to in this case, utility department where they can be counted and receipted and entered into the system, and then the deposit actually be made. So the night depository acts as a safe, for lack of a better term, for the night, and then the city staff can collect it in the morning and complete their task of counting and collections. So that was one suggestion that we've seen many entities use, and to a lot of success. You know, you want to minimize risk to all your staff, and at the same time safeguard city assets.
And just to follow up on the account by the board, would that be something that they would be able to raise without a 501c3? And if they do have money, does that fall under the purview of the city?
Is the board, was the board appointed by the city commission?
It is appointed.
Okay, so then is it not a freestanding legal entity? Have they
No.
applied for a charter? Have they
That I
received
know
their
of, do they have a
401c3?
501?
Mayor, if I may, Mr. Garza, I can answer that. Mayor, we have already those issues on the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. All the cash receipts and all fundraising is going to be done by the board, and Parks and Recreation is going to be funneled through the actual Mr. Ponce and through the finance department, art finance department. That includes any other cash receipts organizations that we have in the city. That was one of the recommendations, but we have addressed that. Yes, they are not 501c3, and that was the main reason that we went ahead and removed the privileges of raising funds because they need to forward all that money that they're raising to the city. And we decide, the Mayor Commission decides as to how to use it, the recommendation, Mr. Garza. But those things have been addressed already, and Mr. Ponce is still working on that as well.
Very good.
Mr. Garza, with your experience as far as like programs with the city, is there municipalities where they just accept debit card, check, or cashier's check, not cash?
That would be real hard because there's a lot of individuals that don't have access to banking, and if they can't access banking, they can't get debit cards. So their only options are money orders, that they can purchase at convenience stores or the post office, or a cashier's check, I guess, if they walked into the bank to do that. I have not encountered, because you have the ability using the controls through centralized collections where you can try to minimize the risk. I haven't seen a situation where they don't accept the cash, but that's not to say that you could not have a policy where you do say money orders at a minimum and just instruct your constituents that that's going to be a policy in the future and direct them to sources where they can obtain those money orders. Because that's similar to what the police department does in their fines collections. They don't accept cash. It's all money orders or cashier's checks. So if it works, and the chief would know that, how that works. But we've looked at that, and the risk is minimal to your staff because there's no cash changing hands. And so it does not open exposure to the staff, the city, or claims from individuals that not getting credited for something that they paid for, because it's all done through money orders. Now that's not to say that if somebody was determined to do something inappropriate that they wouldn't find a way to do it, but it minimizes the risk. So that would be a perfect example to take a look at, and then you can, as a commission, can decide if that's something you may entertain.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, Mr. Garza.
You're welcome.
Under D, presentation of the hurricane preparedness in the city of San Juan, Chief Garza.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners.
Good evening.
Ma'am, as we all know, hurricane season's right around the corner, and the city's pretty much been getting pounded to the north of us, of the state. But for the beginning of the hurricane season, we've been cleaning out the drainage inlets, been flowing pretty good with these past recent rains that we've had. Primavera 1 and 2, no issues. I'm currently working with PSJ ISD and getting that school certified, those
Great.
two schools certified for sheltering. And then once
Which two are those?
Garza Peña and then San Juan Middle School,
Very
off
good.
of 495. Once I get them certified, we'll draft up the MOU and get with the school district in establishing those two facilities as for sheltering. We've already reviewed and updated all the child care and adult daycare facilities, evacuation plans, they're all updated. City generators are up to par. Just recently, we had one that went out at City Hall. We took care of that issue right away. We currently have 210 residents that are registered with the STEERS, the Texas Emergency Assistance Registry. So those would be priority for us in case of an evacuation. Those 210 people would be the first to go, maybe about 3 days before the actual storm makes landfall. All the materials.
Chief?
Yes, ma'am.
Do we do evacuation practices, drills with our staff in their different?
I haven't, Mayor. Matter of fact, I'm looking to having a meeting with all the staff, being that we've had some changes in each department to get them trained on when we do the evacuations.
Very good.
Of course, like I said, these people that are registered are special needs. So in that process, I'll go ahead and get with them and get with them on the procedures that we carry out for evacuations.
Very good.
We have approximately 1,000 sandbags that are ready and available. The issue with the sandbags, Mayor and Commissioners, we can have 2,000 of them, and the bag that we purchase, it just falls apart within time, and they just deteriorate. So, but right now I got with Eric, and he says we have 1,000 bags that are available. All city-owned portable generators are available for power failure should we have any at city lift stations. And we'll be having, like I said, an emergency management meeting the first week of June, once I get with staff, and then we'll proceed with our plans.
Very
Any
good.
questions?
Chief,
Yes, sir.
have we been assisting with any of the flooding happening in
I had
areas north of Edinburgh?
Yes, sir. I had a request from the county on Friday.
From Chief
They
Saldana?
No, I got it through his deputy EMC. They requested a 6-inch pump with hose, and it's still out there, it's pumping. They requested manpower, but I don't know, Mike, did they call you for any manpower? Yeah, they actually had the manpower. What they needed really was the equipment, so we have a pump sitting out there right now.
And the reason I mention that is since the state of emergency declaration was extended on Friday, they're going to be seeking help from FEMA. And so I was really looking at, I guess, more to see if we had sent any
Personnel.
manpower, yeah, because they would.
Yeah, we
be
pretty
seeking
much,
reimbursement.
I got with them, I responded back with them with the 213, which is a request for assistance. And I did tell them that we had manpower available should they need it, but actually what they needed was more the equipment. We have all our equipment that's available. We have it registered through the state, so anytime they need anything, we're ready to help out with whatever they need, manpower or equipment.
Very good. Thank you,
Okay.
Chief.
Mayor, I have two items, Chief, just
sir.
that I wanted to bring out. Do we have a plan of action for animals, the residents that want to house their pets somewhere? Do we have, I know that before we used to either contract with the county or something. What's the plan of action for
No, on that,
those homeowners that have pets?
On that, Chief, nobody stays behind. If they bring an animal and they're gonna be sheltered, we have to designate an area in that school and set it up as a temporary shelter. We will ask assistance from the state, to get the carriers, and we'll set up a hallway in the school, tape it up with plastic, and we just keep track of all the animals. Aside from the residents, we have to keep track of the animals itself. Now, if there's livestock, then we'll ask assistance from the county. And I think one of the plans with the county is that they'll ship them to the stock show grounds. But cats and dogs like that, we would have to account.
And the other one was sex offender individuals. How are we going to deal with them at the emergency? Do you have an emergency plan? I know that every year it's always an issue when it comes down to hurricane season as to, what's the protocol on having them.
On that,
in
Chief,
shelters.
anytime we get with the American Red Cross that they designate and we open a shelter, part of our emergency plan calls for PD to assist with the checking of all the residents that are going in to be housed temporarily. And once, should we find someone, we can't exclude them. We need to designate an area just for them. They can't be excluded.
So do we ask everybody that comes in with an ID or?
Yes, ma'am. The
Has to be
American
an
Red
ID?
Cross, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
American Red Cross, the last time that we opened the shelter back here, which was back in 2008, they take all the information and they scan everybody's driver's license. Now, with the presence of PD there, we would absolutely need them there because we have to designate an area for them. but they can be excluded. But other than that, we're pretty much ready to go. Hopefully, there's a prediction of 7 major storms
Goodness.
with 7 predicted storms, 3 being major storms. So hopefully we can survive it this year also.
Let us pray for
And
this.
as soon as I get the school certified, ma'am, I'll keep
Let
you
us
all
know.
posted. I sure will.
Thank you very much, Chief.
Chief, real quick,
Yes,
do you
sir.
have a list of the emergency management team? And if so, what roles do they play and phone numbers? to
Each
go-
department head is in charge. We have our plan, like Parks and Rec takes care of the sheltering, along with assisting any other agency that should ask for assistance. If they open up a shelter, we can send our personnel to go and assist. It's broken into 8-hour shifts or 12-hour shifts, however they want to run it. But it's all basically the department directors. But I can get you that information.
Please.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. E, presentation update on the water plant number 2. Mr. Cruz.
Mayor and Commissioners, my memo's in your packet. Just real quick, this is as of the status as of May 22nd, which was last Friday. The notice to proceed, just real quick, the notice to proceed was July 14, 2014. Substantial completion will be March 4th, 2016. Final completion, May 3rd, 2016. Total contract time, 660 days. Contract day used by Wednesday, May 22nd, 313 days, 47%. Contract days remaining for final is 347, 53%. Total contract was $8,343,000. Amount billed to date is $2,434,222. And the next monthly meeting is June the 12th at the site. The work update, that actually has been done for the last 3 weeks. There was a little bit done last week by Eberly. 3 people were there, but we had to shut down the project because DESCON didn't have a superintendent on site, and it specifically says on the contract, well, the contract with the city is it was DESCON, so we need to have somebody from DESCON at the site at all times if anybody's working on the project. So when we found out there was nobody there and Eberly was working, we shut them down. I think it was Thursday, and they haven't been back. I think today there was a guy there pumping water. They're just piddling around.
And what are they saying? Why do we not have the superintendent?
They didn't
They
respond.
just, they didn't ask, they didn't state,
No.
they
they
just didn't show up.
Just, nobody was there. We shut them down. They didn't even respond to that email that we wrote right away and then wrote them a letter. They are working today. There was one guy there, and he was just pumping water from the clear well, where the clear well is going to be. Now, we have been getting correspondence from some of the subs, and I've been forwarding to
Mr. Cruz and Mayor, if I may, I think at this point, because of what's been happening the last couple of days, I'd like to see if we can go into executive session to discuss this item. I don't know at what point you'd like to go in, but I'd really like to discuss some things with the city commission on what's been happening.
I might as well do it now.
Under 551-071, Mayor.
Okay, as stated by council, we will now enter into executive session at 6:58 to specifically discuss the matter at hand. item. Coming back into regular session at 7:32. Item F, presentation on departmental reports. Chief Gonzalez.
Yes, Mayor, in your packet, Commission, you have a packet on the departmental reports. I just want to reinforce what the auditor did recommend on the utility billing department to look into those, to that item that he was discussing, and also on the planning and zoning department on the permits.
Very good.
So I'm
You
gonna-
would bring that back to us?
Yes, I sure will.
Thank you. Any questions on any of the reports from the departments? Moving on to public hearing, under A, public hearing and authorize, hold a public hearing and authorize the interim city manager to submit for year 15 Edward Byrd Memorial Justice Assistance Grant, JAG, program local solicitation in the amount of $16,100 under the Department of Justice Bureau of Justice Assistant Grant Program. Ms. Borrego?
Yes, good evening. The grant states that we must hold a public commenting session. That's asking the public to make any comments regarding this particular application. We've done this, we've applied every year, we've been awarded every year. So I don't believe there'll be too many questions. But just to clarify, the grant will be asking for the $16,100. It will cover the cost of 3 digital mobile radios, 3 tasers with battery, 3 holsters, and shipping. I've already received the quote, I've already completed the application, we're just waiting for the 30-day commenting period to be finished so I can go ahead and submit.
Very good. I'd like to open this public hearing at 7:33. Are there any comments from the members of the audience that wish to comment or ask any questions? There being none, I'll go ahead and close the public, any of the commission have any questions at this time? If not, I'd like to go ahead and close the public hearing at 7:33. Is there a motion for approval? Oh, we're not approving anything, are we? Oh, we are.
Yes, to submit.
Okay. Is there a motion for approval as presented for the submission of this grant? Is there a second? All in favor state aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Close the,
Yes, I did. Under contractuals and final plats, A, consider authorizing the interim city manager to enter into a contract for architectural design services with PBK for a public safety building substation. Is there a motion to remove from table?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor state aye.
Aye.
Has been removed. Council, we left with the adjustments being made on this contract.
Yes, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. One of the issues we had was on section 4.3.4. I spoke to the interim city manager. He indicated he didn't feel the 1 year would be a problem. However, out of an abundance of precaution, I spoke to Mr. Alvarado from PBK, who is present in the audience, and he indicated he didn't have a problem if we extended it. So the language I have in the contract, let me get to that section. What I added to the contract was if we were not done within 1 year, that we would be allowed to extend it by an additional 24 months without an additional cost to the city. And Mr. Alvarado agreed to that.
Very good. Tell me specifically on what page that is.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor. That's on page 11, 4.3.4.
Very good.
The next section was 9.8, and let me get to 9.8. 9.8 is on page 15, and that was simply eliminating 11.9,
Yes.
and that was removed. Then the next section was 11.82, and let me get to that page. 11.82, that's on page 18. And what we removed from there is that the architect would not obtain an additional 10% on top of the cost to the architect for his consultants. So that was removed. So the city would simply be paying him for the expense the architect incurred with those architects' consultants. That was removed. Then on 11.102, that's on page 18 as well, Mayor.
Yes.
This was reduced from 6% to 4%. That was agreed by Mr. Alvarado at the last meeting. Let me see. Those were the big changes on the B101 contract.
And then you incorporated all the others that you had already made with the arbitration.
Yes, Mayor. The arbitration was deleted from the contract. The same corrections they stayed the same. Yes, Mayor.
Very good. Any other questions? If not, then is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor state aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Dorado.
Item B, consider authorizing the interim city manager to purchase a trailer-mounted portable 6-inch self-priming diesel pump package from Thompson Pump from Houston, Texas, in the amount of $36,480. Ms. Gonzalez.
This is an item that was presented last year, September 23rd. It was approved by the commission. We did solicit quotes, sealed bids. We received 3 of them, one from Thompson Pumps from Houston, Texas, in the amount of $36,480. Pump Power and Equipment from McAllen, Texas, in the amount of $37,990. And from Odessa Pumps from Odessa, Texas, in the amount of $56,535. The bids were tabulated by the departments. They did go through the bids so that they can get exactly what they needed. The purchase of the 6-inch pump will provide power to the lift stations when the lift stations are out of service. Once the pump is used, the pump cannot be used for any other purpose. But I did, because of the contamination, but I did find out that if there is an emergency, they can clean it with chlorine and it can be used to dewater.
And Ms. Gonzalez, when we approved it back in September, that's been incorporated into this year's budget,
Yes,
is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any questions?
Ms. Gonzalez, what is the warranty on this pump?
It's a year.
It's 1 year?
Yes, yes, Commissioner.
Anything else? If not, is there a motion for approval as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor state aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item C, consider authorizing the interim city manager to declare the NEC phone system as salvage property and authorize the proper disposal of the phones. Ms. Gonzalez.
This is the old phone system. This phone system that we had, NEC, it's obsolete. Staff would like to, we have a vendor that will give staff $4,500, and we'd like your approval to go ahead and sell it for $4,500.
Are there any questions? If not, is there a motion for approval as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Who seconded that? Commissioner Garza. All in favor state aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item D, consider preliminary and final plat approval of the San Miguel subdivision being a re-subdivision of 2.27 acre tract of land out of the lots 4 and 5, Block 8, John Klausner subdivision, located at the northwest corner of Raul Longoria Road and Monica Lane, as requested by Montemayor, Hans Garcia Villafranco and Associates. Mr.
Mayor, City
Cervantes.
Commission, good evening. The developer is proposing to subdivide the property in order to build a commercial plaza. In the property, the applicant is proposing to demolish the existing house and build up the plaza in both lots. The property is already zoned general business district to allow this type of development. Staff recommends approval, subject to the conditions in the packet. Planning and Zoning Commission unanimously recommended approval during their May 21 meeting.
Cervantes, on the, it's a plaza that, is it next to also the property for the restaurant, correct?
The San Miguel restaurant is north, it's 2 properties to the north.
Okay, the entrance and exit, because it does spill into the main street, Raul Longoria. Is there going to be also access on the Monica Lane?
I believe they want one entrance on Monica Lane also.
Okay. Do we have any, we had some issues when we did the Mesquite, if you remember, the residents were talking about the
Yes.
bus. Do you
Yes.
foresee that kind of issue with this?
The difference on that one is, on San Miguel, is that they needed to get a conditional use permit for alcohol sales. So that triggered the public hearing, and that made the change to the restaurant. That triggered the change in the design. On this plaza, there may not be any alcohol sales, so there wouldn't be any public hearings.
We don't know that at this point.
We don't know at this point.
Gotcha.
And so if at some point it is, then they would come back for a public hearing?
If a restaurant goes in there and they want to sell alcohol, they will have to go through the process of getting the public hearing. But by then, that entrance on Monica may already be there.
Already done, yeah.
May already be there. But I understand they want one entrance on Raul Longoria and one entrance on Monica to have good flow for the traffic.
Do you know how many retail spaces they're looking in this plaza?
Well, the owner also owns a property just north, which is the property between this subdivision and the restaurant.
Okay,
It's all the same owner. So he wants to develop the plaza in 3 properties. So it's gonna be a good size,
good size.
good size plaza with several spaces. Yes. And apparently he already has some leases in place for different things, so he just needs to get this recorded, and there's a couple of fire hydrants that he needs to install, and we'll issue the permits.
Very good. And the residents, I didn't see any complaint of the residents.
Well, it's not a public hearing, it's just a subdivision
That'll come
plat.
later.
If there's alcohol sales,
Okay.
yes.
Alrighty. Any questions from the commission? If not, is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor state aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Cervantes. Under the consent agenda, approval of minutes for May 12, 2015, regular meeting. B, monthly collection report for April 30th, 2015, and consider approval of the City of San Juan, Texas quarterly investment report dated March 31st, 2015, as required by the Public Funds Investment Act. Any item on the consent agenda that needs to be pulled? If not, is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor state aye.
Aye.
Items have been approved. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor state aye.
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned at 7:43.